back to my channel. Welcome if you are new. I'm JC, a contemporary fiction author and poet. I post videos on Mondays and Fridays. I also live stream on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I have a blog, an online magazine, an online store with some writer merch. I have a Patreon that you can become a member of, or you can tip me on my Ko-fi for any future and creative endeavors that you would like to donate to. Today's video is going to be about my writing process, such as it is. I have been asked to make this video several times by different people, and I think it took me so long because I had to kind of actually think about what my process is. I never really took time to think in steps what that process looked like. I just on autopilot when I get an idea, and yeah, it's just like an autopilot thing for me. So I had to actually stop and think about, and then each project it changes, so it's not 100% the same, but I did gather the parts of the process for me that are basically the same for each project that I'm going to share with you now. So when we talk about ideas, when we talk about, because I'm going to address from idea all the way to the publishing point, which oddly enough are not as many steps as I actually thought they required when I wrote it all down. Obviously, first things start with the spark of an idea, and lots of people get ideas from different mediums and different things. I'm not any different in that regard, but I will say that a lot of times I get different ideas that I jot down and store away and keep in documents or on a Pinterest board or just in a notebook, handwritten. But I will say what makes it go from an idea to actually fully taking it to the brainstorming stage for me is typically, and I know this sounds a little woo-woo, but typically my characters come to me in dreams. Most of the time. Actually, 1, 2, 3, yeah, all 3 of the novels that I have out, they came to me in dreams. So usually when I know an idea is ready for me to actually flesh it out and outline it and take it through the process of getting it to where I'm going to draft the first draft, which is where we start, the dream happens. The character, usually the main character, sometimes there'll be a side character. I will say with When Love Calls, because there are 2 main characters, there were 2 separate dreams, which is how it ended up being a dual POV in the first place, is because the male main character was like, well, what about my side of the story, basically. But for me, when the character comes to me in a dream, it's kind of like, okay, you're ready to really flesh out this idea now. And so then that's when we get to the brainstorming of it all, because an idea is just a seedling of a thing until you start to feed it, and then it branches out and it blooms into something bigger. So when I get a little sprout of an idea, I file it away, but when the character comes to me and says it's ready to tell their story, then I start feeding that idea. I brainstorm, and if research needs to be done, I research, depending on the subject matter, because they're like in the way to where there were certain subject matters that while the character was telling me this is going to happen, I'm like, well, I don't know how that works. So there was research that needed to be done. But that went into the brainstorming and fleshing things out, deciding what kind of story I want to tell. I think The Weight of Her is my own it's technically my only single POV book. The diary is a dual POV if you really think about it, but I didn't set it up that way. Oh, because the diary, when I initially wrote it, the diary may be the only book that I did not outline in as detailed I did not outline in as detailed of a way that I do now, because the diary was a little personal to me. There were some personal aspects that were close to me, and it was kind of cathartic to write it. So there may be, or may not be, an interview about that process and what that story is like, the personal aspect and how that relates to me, somewhere in someone's archive. But when I started the diary, there was the daughter's aspect of it, but the mother's aspect too, which makes it a dual POV. But the mother's aspect is written in diary entries. And I did not write them in tandem with one another. I didn't write them together. I didn't write them at the same time. The diary entries actually came first. Yeah, the diary entries came first, and the daughter came to me after that and was basically integrated into the story. And then it was a dual POV, which, I didn't think about it because the mother in the diary is dead. So I didn't think this is a dual POV because this is not two people present day telling their stories. But dual POV doesn't have to be both characters in the present telling their story. So The Weight of Her is actually just a single POV. The Weight of Her is actually, fun fact, my favorite book that I've written. Even though I love When Love Calls. But I think because of the personal nature again and what it touches on, The Weight of Her is kind of still my favorite. Okay, so after we brainstorm, then we get to the fun part of outlining. Fun for me. I know everybody doesn't feel the same way about outlining, but because I know how it is to write a story without an outline, i.e. the diary, I don't like writing stories without outlines. I will not write a story that is not outlined in some way. It may not have to be as detailed as I typically like it to be, but it does have to have an outline for me to start drafting. And I know some people think I've just always been this diehard outliner. I have not. I have pants. The first novel I ever wrote, which will probably never see the light of day, it's called Love Don't Love Me. There have been thoughts of me reviving that, but I think it's just probably meant to be just what it is, my first attempt at writing a novel, and call it that. And I didn't outline that either. I pants that, which is probably why when I read part of it back I cringe. There are aspects of it that I'm like, oh, this is not consistent. This is not, yeah, no. And then the diary was difficult because it was not outlined, but I felt like I couldn't write it as authentically as I wanted to if I outlined it, because it was so personal to me. It has a lot to do with certain personal things that actually happened in my life that I've fictionalized up, of course, but a lot of things are personal and I can't outline that. But looking back, I wish I had outlined it. I wish I had thought to outline it. It might have gone a lot smoother and not taken as long. But that said, and when we outline, there are various different kinds of outlines. There are loose outlines. There are the bullet point. Well, when I say loose outlines, I mean like the bullet point outlines. That's loose for me. There are extremely detailed outlines, which is kind of where I fall in. My outline for Mackenzie Brown, I want to say, is probably about 50K. Probably. I've had outlines 50 to 60K. I know they could be whole books. Some people say they're zero drafts. I don't like the term zero draft. I don't believe in that term. So I would never call it that. I'm not telling the story in my outlines. In no way would you ever look at my outline and grasp what the story is actually going to be about. And also because a lot of the times my outlines change as I write the story. Or should I say the story changes from the outline as I write it, because sometimes the characters take me in a different direction than what I initially had outlined. Because when I say my characters talk to me, if I don't get the story right, they will tell me. The weight of her, it was outlined one way at first. And then the character was like, that's not how I told you to tell my story. And then I outlined it again. And the character came to me and was like, you're getting closer, but that's still not how I told you to tell my story. And she was like, I know that this part of the story is a little hard for you. It's a little emotional, but this is my story. Essentially, that's what she said. If you've read The Weight of Her, you know Brennan's a mess. But so when the story is not being told like my character wants it told, it changes that from the outline. And I know this sounds crazy, but it is my process. So my outlines include detailed, it starts with bullet points for what I want to happen maybe in each chapter. It starts with bullet points of what I want to happen in the overall book. And then I have the chapter by chapter part of the outline. Then I include the character sketches and the character descriptions and basically the character, I don't know what I would call it, because like a series Bible is about like the story, the character Bible, I don't know, but I have to have like a little packet that describes each character, their background, their personalities, their description and whatnot, and that is included as part of my outline. If there's any world building that needs to be done, or if it's not set in a place that I know, or if it's set in a fictional town and I need to add some fictional details, that is included in outlining. And until that outline is done for me, or done good enough where I feel like I can start the draft, I will not start the draft. So after the outlining stage is draft 1. And because I outline, I like to think that is why I am able to finish a draft quicker than, like I said, the diary took so long, so long to write the first draft of that book. It should not have taken that long, but it did, partially because there was no outline. But the first drafts don't usually take me that long. It's the second and subsequent drafts that take longer. So the first draft I can usually do 2 to 3 months, usually, if I don't take any breaks in between working on the draft. Like Mackenzie Brown Book 5, I have taken a very big break from working on draft 1, so it's still not done. Theoretically, it would have been done in like 2 to 3 months if I had worked on it continually, but other idea for pen name took over, and here we are. So draft 1 doesn't typically take me long if I work on it continually. The problem is I don't always work on the ideas continually. I used to be a one project type of person where I had to work on one project at a time and I couldn't work on more than one project at a time. But now that I'm trying to balance multiple projects, it can take maybe 3 to 4 months sometimes to get through draft 1. Then I let it rest, and I can let it rest anywhere from 6 months to a year, maybe, possibly, probably, definitely at least 6 months. I know the recommended time is usually maybe a month, but I like to let it rest and like to come back to it as if I'm not the person who wrote it. Where were we? And yes, I might look a little disheveled because some time has passed since that last little part. But we're discussing my process, and I think I left off after the first draft. So after the first draft, I like to let it rest, usually for about at minimum 6 months, or probably a little longer. And sometimes it could go to a year of a rest period simply because I've moved on to a different project, and now that project is taking higher priority at the moment. Because the thing about me is I have front burner projects, but usually in the rest phase, I move a different project to the front burner, and then I put that in like the middle burner section, and for it to kind of cool and wait, and you know. So after I let it rest for about 6 months to a year, depending on how involved I am with whatever project I started working on while it rested, then I go to start revising, which usually entails a read through, obviously, because I haven't visited the story in a while. So it involves a read through, and I feel like my read throughs for the second draft tend to give me a bit of a better perspective just because of how long I've let it rest. And that allows me to read it from the standpoint of a reader and not so much the person who wrote it, because I'll forget that I wrote certain passages in the manuscript and like, oh, I don't remember writing that, but that's pretty good. Or, oh, I don't remember writing that, but that's kind of sucks and that needs to be reworked. Or I'll notice inconsistencies that maybe didn't pop out to me before because, I was too close to it. But now that I've taken that step back for quite a while, it's easier to see the inconsistencies or the things that need to be corrected. So I feel like it's easier to see what needs to be changed or fixed when you take a bigger rest period from it. And I know, like, for some people who are doing traditionally publishing, they don't have the luxury to take a rest period from their manuscript. Because they're under contract and under hard deadline. I do make my own deadlines, but they're mine. I don't have a company, and this could change. This process could change if I were to ever. I would like to be a hybrid author, so if I ever got the traditional publishing deal, the process could change because I would be under different constraints. But for right now, I can afford to let it rest for a while, for long enough to take a step back from it. So after the second revision, I don't typically let it rest too long after the second revision. I'll go maybe about a month, and not quite as long, but a little bit of a rest. And then I'll come back and I'll start with the self-editing process, and then we'll go in for a third revision to kind of tidy up, fix things or whatever that may need to be fixed. If there's anything that needs to be severely fixed structurally, like plot-wise, but I tend to find that the more detailed my outlines are, the less amount of drafts that I need. So it's why I typically I go about maybe 4, maybe 5 drafts, depending on what the feedback is from beta readers, which is what I'll get to after the third revision. So second revision, let it rest for about a month, come back, go back over, see if anything needs to be adjusted, changed, or whatever. Third revision usually involves less work than the second revision, depending on what I might find. Now, in the case of When Love Calls, The first revision, well, draft 2 for When Love Calls actually involved major reworking because I went from a single POV to a dual POV. So it involves some major reconstructing of things. So When Love Calls was a little different. And then so draft 3 was a little more entailed than it would normally be because draft 2 was so vastly different from the first draft. Normally my second drafts they don't go from like a single POV to a dual POV, you know? So that was a really big shift for me, big change for me. So after the third revision, I let it rest, but not as long. Maybe 2 weeks. I go back, I adjust. That's when I go in to maybe fix on. I've talked here before about the fact that my huge issue is I have white room syndrome. I'm really bad at describing things. I could have a picture right in front of me and still could not describe it to you. And still would need help describing it to you. It's agony for me to describe things. So while I'm not a person who uses brackets in my drafts, I will tentatively describe something as best I can. But usually like in the third draft is when I go back in to like really tighten up any kind of descriptive things that need to be elaborated on, or even maybe pulled back because maybe I put too much description trying to be overly cautious. I'll tighten up any dialogue with the third draft. Any if I'm using any world building or fictional settings, I'll tighten up areas with that. And then it is time for beta readers. And that is when I'll get feedback to see how it is received. If it's liked, whether the beta readers see any plot holes still or any character deficiencies or maybe still some issues with description. Just, I have a set of questions that I usually typically ask. I usually always ask about voice because I always want to make sure I have a good voice for the character and that you can distinct between the main character's voice and the best friend's voice, or if it's a dual POV, the female main character's voice and the male character's voice. I always like to make sure I'm getting the voice right because I might think it sounds good, but I need to hear from someone else. So after I get beta reader feedback, I do adjust accordingly for, I don't know if I could really call it a draft 4 so much as a tightening up of the third draft, but I mean, we can, for the sake of this video, we can call it a draft 4 because that is when I go in and adjust according to beta reader feedback, but not all beta reader feedback. And I want to make sure I point this out because I have seen authors in the community agonize over beta reader feedback. You do not have to take all of the feedback that your beta readers give you. Obviously, you're asking for the feedback for a reason, yes. But I want to say that the main thing is that you know the story you're trying to tell. You know the message or whatever you're trying to convey with your story. As long as you are sticking to that, because it could be that your beta readers don't like a certain personality trait of one of your characters, but for you, that personality trait is vital to the growth that character will have at the end. So it's not a thing that you would really change because it's important and crucial to your story. Yes, it might have been the feedback that someone gave you that they didn't like that trait, but that is when you have to make a judgment call of, okay, this is the feedback, but what story do I want to tell? Overall, this is still your story. This is still your novel, your book. your characters. And yes, feedback is important, but you have to know your story and when to say, okay, I hear what this person is saying, but if I change it to what they suggest, it will take away from what the story I'm trying to portray. And then you have to balance those two things of whether you want to listen to this one person's feedback or whether you want to stick to the story that you are trying to stay true to the story you're trying to tell. And you have to make that differentiation for yourself. Another thing is, I want to point out that I've seen some people who have like 10 beta readers. There is a such thing as too many. And because it's 10 different voices telling you what to fix or not to fix about your story. And again, it is still your story. And the thing about getting feedback is, with any feedback, it's inherent that you're going to get those voices in your head and you're going to wonder, well, this person said this, so is this what all these other readers are going to be thinking? Is this person representative of the vast majority of my readership? You're going to have lots of things going through your head the more voices that you implement into this process. Having a good amount of beta readers is great. There is a such thing as too many. It's too many voices into your story. And ultimately, once again, it's your story. That's not to disparage any person doing beta reading. I do beta reading. My opinion is my opinion, but it doesn't have to be what that person who wrote the story ultimately goes with, because again, it's their story. So I say that to you because I want to impart that beta reader feedback is a suggestion. It doesn't have to be the blueprint for your story. That said, beta reading is an important part of the process. I typically only like to have about 3, maybe 4 beta readers. May seem like a small number, but again, I don't like too many voices in my head. I'm already an overthinker. I overthink everything as it is, like absolutely everything I overthink. I don't need too many voices. And then I need to make sure I stay true to the story I'm trying to tell. After that feedback, I implement the feedback that I want to take, and I, file away some of the feedback maybe for future stories. Like if it's a feedback on something about description or whatever, or style, I might file that away for later. But I take the feedback that is necessary and I go and make my final edits and final adjustments. Then there's the cover process, and where you get everyone has a different stage of where they get their cover worked on. I would like to have a couple of drafts done before I start working on a cover because, I like to get the full picture of everything wrapped up into this story, to tell the person that I want to do the cover, usually Laura, the details and things about the story. Then after the cover is done, I included the cover reveal, but that's not really necessarily have to be a part of the process. You don't have to do a cover reveal. You could completely keep the cover under wraps until you're ready to publish, or not. Then let's see. So after all the editing and everything is done, and you have your cover, then there is the formatting and hiring a formatter, or formatting it yourself if you are capable. I am not. Pull my hair out with the weight of her. I don't want to do that again. Sky was amazing this time around, and I would love to use Sky going forward because she's amazing. So That's when you get your formatting, and then I register my ISBN for my book. You go to the Bowker site. I'll put a link below in the video for the site to Bowker to purchase ISBNs. I purchased a set of 10 ISBNs long before I ever published the diary. So I've had them for a very, very long time. And I'm glad I'm finally getting to number 6 now. I thought I'd be here a lot sooner, but that's besides the point. You do have to, even if you purchase your set of ISBN numbers along, like, way back, you have to register each book when you get ready to publish. So I registered the ISBN number because when you upload, the next step, uploading the paperback, ebooks, and paperback and ebook files, you have to give Amazon your ISBN or use one of theirs. I typically would not like to use one of theirs if I can help it. So that is when I give them my ISBN number. And then you run the uploaded material through all the checks, finalize what's run through as long as nothing comes back wrong, and as long as the cover and the measurements and everything are good. I usually tend to somehow have an issue with the measurements of the cover every single time. I don't know, because I go with what they give me, and then I give the measurements to Laura, and she makes the thing according to the measurements Amazon gave me, and somehow it always comes out wrong in the first go around. But it's a very simple fix if you have a cover designer that's easily accessible to you. And then after that, I order my proof copies, and that is when you get this lovely little thing that has the lovely little bar going across, not for resale. So that allows me to go through the book as it would look like once it's actually printed out, and make sure everything is good. And here's why it's good to order your proof copies, because I had noticed on the back cover that there was a drop in the blurb in the back cover, so I had to get Laura to fix that and redo it so that I could have it go out properly when it's published. But that is why ordering proof copies is very important. So once that was done and you make future adjustments for the cover, go over the proofs and adjust as needed, and you finalize and you set the pricing. And then on the date, if you're a person who does pre-orders, you set a pre-order. If you're like me, I just let it sit there until I am ready to hit publish. And yeah, that is my process. I know that it seems like, because I said that I only have about 3, maybe 4 drafts before I am finished or whatever, the diary took 10 rounds of editing. Again, was not outlined. And I stick to the fact that outlining saves so many steps. I know there are lots of people who do not do outlines, but I stand by them. I don't think I could write a book today without one. I mean, I probably could, but it would be a mess. And I'd have to go do 10 more rounds of editing again, which I don't want to do. But that is my process. I hope it was easily understandable and succinct to you. Like I said, that could change if I ever get traditionally published and have to follow a strict deadline. That could change. But for now, that is my process. I think that's the process I've pretty much followed for the last couple of books. I'm kind of happy with it. So that is going to be it for this video. If you like what you see and you want to see more videos from me, make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button. I post videos on Mondays and Fridays. I live stream on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As per usual, if you would like to be supportive of me in any of my creative endeavors, such as my blog, my online magazine, my online store with writer merch, becoming a member of my Patreon, tipping me on my Ko-fi, buying my books on Amazon, or reading them in Kindle Unlimited. All of those things can be found in the description box below. Till next time, take care of yourselves. Bye.